Avery, whose show is this? And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin with a special bonus episode on a game day because you know what? The Lakers are 3-0. I'm in a good mood. The Dodgers are up 2-0 in the World Series. Like, I just want to enjoy this moment. And sometimes you just create extra content to be able to enjoy this moment. And no better person, frankly, to enjoy this moment with than our buddy Pete, whose face you can see.
Imagine that.
Pete is here, obviously, of the Laker Film Room podcast. He is obviously, he and I did Locked on Lakers way back in the day together. Already doing incredible video breakdowns on your YouTube page and on playback and all that stuff. Pete, how are you enjoying the season so far?
So much fun, man. Like, how fun is this? The Lakers feel healthy for the first time in several years. And so who knows where it goes? And obviously,
and they aren't
3 games. Wait, right. But I'm saying just like the general environment, this is, if you listen to my pod last year, I got so many texts where it was like, I've never heard someone so pissed off about garbage time units. Like, I would talk all the time about how much our deep bench stunk, because to me, it was indicative like a basketball environment that was way more important and permeated way more of like what was wrong with last year's team than people realized. And so just, that symptomatic element. And so it felt like things needed to be kind of dug up by the roots, and just feels like they're in a healthy place. Guys are bought in, man. They're hooping.
That's why I freaked out over the 60-point loss at the end of during the second to last, the last preseason
That was
game.
The last one.
Because I was like, not again. Because those end of bench units would come in under Darvin and played zero semblance of any kind of decent basketball. And now the difference there was that like those end of bench units were playing against other end of bench units and they were getting their asses kicked. Right. Whereas like this end of bench unit was playing against most of a rotation. Steph didn't play in that game and got its ass kicked. But I was like, no, come on. No, because I have such PTSD from last year. Because like, you and I, Pete, like we come from coaching backgrounds. We like we watch, we kind of see what it looks like when a team is letting go of the rope or just completely tuning out a coach. And last year was just so evident right from the get that they just did not give a single fuck about what Darvin was trying to sell them. And for the beginning of this season, it's been the complete opposite of that, right? It is like the guy, we're going to talk about biggest surprises here at the end of the show, but the surprise that I've seen has been like the way that Rui is playing and how much he is just relished in being coached and being told what to do. What are your expectations of me? How can I fill those expectations and stay after me if I'm not, and like that's been so much fun to see. And so like at the end of that preseason game and they're getting their asses kicked by 60, I'm like, come on, this can't be okay. And then, fortunately, and this is the thing I always say, if I'm down on the Lakers, if I'm down on a player, if I'm down on whatever, I hope I'm wrong, right? I hope like hell I was wrong coming into the season because I didn't feel great about the season. If you would have told me coming into the year they were 3-0, they would be 3-0, and playing the way that they are, I'd been like, damn, really? Okay, all right.
I wouldn't have predicted it necessarily, but like to me, there are obvious basketball reasons for why we would beat Phoenix and Sacramento, right? And even the Minnesota game, like that's a team that's figuring itself out. They'll be better down the line. But it wasn't just because they were bad. We were organized on defense. There's like there was so much on. It's a very gratifying year so far because there was so much low-hanging fruit to be picked. The last 2 years, when we just played our guys, they played 700 basketball. It's not a small sample size at this point in terms of like, just don't do totally galaxy brain things. You'll be a really good team.
It's so insane because I don't like to operate in the black and white. I don't like to just say X went wrong because of Y, and that was it. And I do think that there was a little bit more going on last year than just Darvin being Darvin,
Of
because
course.
I do think the guys gave up on him and that stuff a little too quickly, even given the uncomfortable circumstances. But it was just like to bang the drum all year long of, hey man, play your best players. Can we just try it? Like, can we just see what it looks like? Just play your best players, and to go as long as he did. Somebody retweeted I'll see if I can grab it at some point here. But there was like a presser after one of the games that the Lakers had actually won on the backs of the best players from from 2 years prior. And Darvin, like after the game, was like, I don't need any lineup questions or whatever. And I just
Mm-hmm.
go
Mm-hmm.
home, drink some wine and enjoy the win. And like that's what led to this moment. This is why I look like this, everybody. This is why I'm losing my mind. Like it was just
Is this how the show goes now, Anthony? You've added production elements. It's nice.
I'm trying it out. But like, yeah, like last year to just like, just say, hey man, try your best players, Let's see how it goes. And then he finally does, and they go on a run, and then you come into this season and those best players are playing again. And like how refreshing it was to hear JJ Redick say, like, yeah, I'm gonna play the guys who went 23-8 or whatever it was. And for all of us to sit here like, what a concept. And so like on one hand, you're absolutely right, Pete, that like maybe I couldn't see the trees through the forest or whatever it is. Like I got so caught up in the frustrations from last year and the frustration of not doing anything in the offseason to look ahead to the first 5 games of the season and be like, let's see if you can get 2 out of those 5. Let's see how it goes, But you're absolutely right to point out that like, no, like it shouldn't have been shocking,
Right.
that
Like,
they are now 3-0.
yeah, and with Phoenix and like I don't love the DeRozan move for Sacramento.
Me
I
neither.
think they've downsized in a way that
They're
the
already
Lakers.
small.
Right, they're already small, and I think it's kind of a breaking point with like one thing. I got to catch the game along the baseline, the Sacramento game. I was there in the lower bowl, and from that particular angle, you see post play and all of that a lot more. And you were talking about Rui and how well he's been playing from that angle. Like we were switching AD and Rui on a lot of actions where it like, hey, look, AD is freed up to defend on the perimeter sometimes for the first time in years. And you've got this big physical kid in Rui where, he famously guarded Jokic, but Sabonis is 6'9". He's not the height that Jokic is. And Rui's a difficult player to go through. And Sabonis is really strong. It's very obvious how powerful he is in person, And Rui held his own. And it was just like, that's a totally common sense deployment of, if you look at Rui, if you watch Rui play basketball, do you think, hey, he's going to be great at chasing people around 30 feet from the rim? Or, hey, maybe he could help Anthony Davis with some of the physical stuff. And then I feel way better about Anthony Davis being the player that's chasing people around on the perimeter.
Yeah, Rui walks into a room and you're just like, that guy should be as close to the basket as you can get him.
Right.
He's a huge human being. My question to you though, and a quick reminder to those of you who are now tuned in, please hit that subscribe button, please hit that like button, yada yada yada. But like I want to get from you, walk away from this, how you feel about like the sustainability of this. Like, do you think this is, do you think this is who the Lakers are, or do you think it's that honeymoon period?
I think it's both. I think the Lakers are set off on the right course, right? Like if we were sailing a ship across the ocean, we're going the right way for now to get to where we want to go. And there's all sorts of places along the way that we could get sidetracked, but it depends on, can you drill down for me a little bit about what you mean about what is this, right? We know they're not going to go 82-0, but what does sustaining this mean to you?
I guess this identity for starters, like if they, because and the reason I use the phrase honeymoon period, Jen and I have been together for 20 years now. Wow. And over the course of our relationship, we've met a lot of our friends have gotten with new boyfriends or girlfriends or whatever. And they'll say like, man, we just never fight. this person, like they are the best, like this and that, this and that. And anytime somebody tells me, like, if they're months into their relationship, 6 months into their relationship, and they're like, we don't even argue, like we don't even, and I'm like, oh, so you guys are just lying. Like you guys just do a lot of lying to each other, you
Yeah,
know?
or yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, or yourself. And that's why I wonder about like this identity, because like they are so early in this process and they are being rewarded with success, which I think is a huge factor here. But eventually guys are going to regress back to some of their bad habits. Guys are going to regress back into or like the league will start to figure out what the Lakers are trying to figure out and stuff like that, and that'll have an impact on it too. So like this kind of general approach to basketball, the way that they're being rewarded with success, like how much do you think like these vibes can continue?
I think they are very much continuable.
Yeah, I
However,
think so too.
there's going to be hills and valleys. It's an 82 game season and everything that comes with that. But your coach has to be a source of steam, a source of pushback against the phenomenon that you were just talking about, right?
Yeah.
Where your team is there's going to be a day where all of us wake up for work and we're like, it's not my best day at work, and you
Yeah.
still got to get through that day and still do your work. And having another person there to motivate and inspire you, also someone else having their crap together and having like you walk in a little bleary eyed and somebody else is like, all right, this is the plan for today. You're doing this, you're doing that. I got it organized. I thought
Yes,
about it
indeed,
for
Pete.
3
We
hours
did a
last.
show together. You remember what it was like when I sat down and I was bleary eyed and you were like, dude, you got to wake up.
And it's nice when somebody can be a source of steam and organization. And also that organization makes your life easier. Like part of the bad habits, right? Like in saying some of that is attributable, like we're assigning something, we don't necessarily know that it's bad habit as much as it can be frustration. It can be like if your coach is making your life harder on you every day, and if they're running a scheme, for example, where your job within that scheme, it's like, I'm not very good at this, I'm not comfortable at doing this, and you know it better than anybody else does, versus where you come into work and like the plan for the day has you doing something you're good at, you enjoy, the overall plan makes sense, you have clear instructions, you were saying about Rui. And so that to me is sustainable. And
Yeah.
so if you can maintain that, and I have a high level of excitement that I think it will, then I think that, yeah, that is sustainable and you'll win games as a result.
That's the thing is, I think you need kind of that engine to the sustainability.
Right.
And I think JJ approaching the gig the way that he has is, I think, the engine to the sustainability,
That's right.
because he is. I said this like this was a compliment. This is still a compliment. He's an asshole.
Yeah.
Like he is capable of being an asshole, but he also counterbalances that with the utmost belief that, by the way, the players actually believe that they're believed in, right? Like you would hear Darvin talk about like his levels of belief in the players last year, but it always seemed kind of empty, kind of platitude-y, you know? And I listened to the way that JJ talks about guys, and it's not just that he believes in them, but he also believes in them because of what the Lakers are doing to put them in better situations to succeed.
Right.
And
That's
there's follow-up to why he believes in them. You know, like when he was talking about Anthony Davis coming into the year, or he would talk about LeBron, obviously any coach coaching those two guys are going to really believe in them. But what I think has really resonated through these first few games, and even we saw it in the preseason too, was the utmost belief that he could actually unlock them to a certain extent compared to what we'd seen recently, where it isn't Anthony Davis getting some lazy cross screen, walking over to the other side of the paint, setting up shop and being told, go to work, big guy. Like, no, you're going to attack the defense at this angle from over here sometimes. And then sometimes we're going to put you in a pick and roll here. Sometimes we're going to compromise the defense this way. The way that they've attacked zones has been really fun to watch this year, because, with some of those shooting questions that the Lakers have, they're going to have to face a zone. LeBron, being used as a screener or a DHO guy and getting to get downhill against a compromised defense. Like it's like, this is why I truly believe that this is sustainable, health notwithstanding, is because there's a significant amount of belief that goes now two ways. I think the guys 100% have seen JJ put the work in, and that's why, like, everything doesn't have to be a reflection of Darvin, but when that's the most recent experience, and then you see some guy come in and he's a basketball sicko in the way that JJ has been, and the stuff is working, that's how you develop and maintain that sustainability. So I is this the new Lakers, to answer the prompt there at the bottom of the screen? I don't know. It's really, really early. I think there are still some tweaks I would like to see along the way too, and we'll talk about those. But is this, like, if I'm a fan and we heard about what the Lakers did or didn't do in the offseason, preseason was kind of lukewarm too. And if I'm a fan and I'm just asking somebody, hey, like, how are the Lakers this year? I think I could pretty confidently tell them, I think they're going to be good. I think they're going to be good. And that, frankly, at the onset of the season, that's about as much as you could possibly accomplish from me, by the way.
Yeah.
Like,
great.
What's been your favorite part of this to take in? Like, what's been early on, like, what's been like the part of the basketball that has brought you the most joy?
Having a rookie that you're like, oh, I think we might have a guy.
Yeah.
We might have a freaking guy.
Yeah.
That's one of the best things. It reminds me of Eddie Jones's rookie year a little bit, right? Eddie was a little older. He was 23 when he came out of Temple, but he stepped onto an NBA court, and it was, I was like 13 years old, and it was like, oh, he's ready right away. And, he was starting. And so to me, watching Dalton and then watching him on defense and be like, oh, he can do some things, and I'm totally enamored with his game. I think that his skill set is exactly what complements a lot of the rim pressure that we have on the team. And that I think that he's a very unusual rookie in that I think they've got training wheels on him a little bit right now, but
which is good.
Like, if, say, there are 1,000 versions of the way this NBA season can go, and let's say the Lakers can win a championship in a handful of them, I would say that in pretty much every one of them, Dalton Connect not only hitting, but like being ready right away or to whatever degree he can be as a rotation guy, right, is in those versions. And so between that and then, like, he's like 4 years, 18 million on his contract. If those guys can play, you are gold from a team building standpoint. Combine that with Austin's contract. It's just like, when I say the Lakers are in the healthiest place they've been in a minute, part of it is from that perspective too. Like, we've got good young players. Ruby's kicking ass and really finding a role. And man, it's compare that to where the roster was a couple of years ago and how bleak things looked. Like, it's pretty cool.
Great thing about Dalton is he's going to allow JJ to stagger Austin and D'Lo.
Yes.
And I think that really takes the team's capabilities in the postseason to a higher spot, because, previously, like, Darvin felt the need to rely solely on that backcourt. And if they weren't going to figure it out, the Lakers weren't going to figure it out. But if Dalton keeps this up and is legit, and, rookie wall is going to happen, and shooting slumps are going to happen, and he's going to get picked on a little bit too defensively. I think they've done a good job of hiding him to the extent that they can right now. But I think eventually, though, if he keeps this up, and if he is like a certifiably playable rookie at that 2 spot, and it allows you to, go from like right now, LeBron's been the first sub. I think I would like to see that be one of Austin or D'Lo, with Dalton coming in. And, eventually, I get why they're doing that with LeBron, because JJ is not playing any minutes without LeBron or AD on, both on the court, or, he doesn't want both of them sitting at the same time, which I think is also smart. But I think eventually that'll be one tweak that I would make to the rotation here.
I couldn't agree more.
And I think, like, this is the thing, is that, like, you talk about the sustainability from a second ago, even before we get to the roster additions or whatever, or tweaks, there are things that the Lakers could do better that make them better than they are right now when they're sitting 3-0. So that's why when people try to poke holes in the 3 wins that they have, Minnesota just made the trade. Phoenix is working it out with a new coach. Sacramento's making it work out with DeMar DeRozan. By the way, the Lakers also are working out with a new coach. But when I hear some of that stuff, I would just come back to them and be like, they haven't shot the ball particularly well. And again, still working stuff out. And I think there are tweaks that JJ, I think, is going to be very aware of, this being one of them. What do you think of staggering D'Lo and Austin a little bit more?
We are so simpatico on this. Like the lineup change that, I mean, we're 3-0. We're not going to make a starting lineup.
Nothing crazy.
3-0. But what I think is on a longer horizon is flipping Dalton and D'Lo and like, because to your point, things that the Lakers can do better. It's a record scratch moment when Max comes in for LeBron, because you're going from your most knowledgeable and skilled offensive player to one of your least fluent offensive players, right? Like Max, you give Max an open catch and shoot 3 or a closeout, he's going to run in transition, right? But beyond that, it starts dropping off pretty quickly. And so it's almost like a cooking recipe where you could switch some sugar for some salt instead. And so then, but I think that this team will be very well understood. I think Redick has some very distinctive lineups that he's going for, where you've got our starters, which is our 5 best players. Who'd have thunk it? LeBron is the first sub, and that's where I agree with that tweak. And if I were to flip Dalton and Austin, then I'm sorry, if I were to flip Dalton and D'Lo, I think D'Lo would come in for LeBron basically, and everybody gets bumped up a spot, right? Because then after the LeBron sub, I feel like the we stink on offense problem gets exacerbated because Gabe comes in too. And I don't think Gabe and Max can play together. I think Max has got to play next to D'Lo, especially, right? Because even Austin, I think Max needs that certain level of point guard, like, creativity. And exactly. And so that I'm totally with you on that. And then they've got the big lineup, which has been okay to end the first and third quarters, right? With Jackson and AD. LeBron comes back in and plays the 3. Gabe is on the court. Then that group is okay. I'm super curious what happens when Vando comes back and where he slots into all of this. But I'm totally with you on that. Like D'Lo as the backup one on here. I know it sounds like a demotion, but for example, the end of that Sacramento game, that's just DeRozan going over the top of a mismatch over and over again. I tell you, he's going to have, and he did on Dalton forced a miss on this. They were just overwhelming D'Lo with size and superior athleticism. Much harder to do that against Dalton. And so, anyway, I'm totally with you on the D'Lo needed in that stretch.
How do you think D'Lo handles that?
That's the part. Obviously, this is, easy to say from behind a mic. And then there's the personal. I think D'Lo is super underrated from a trying to facilitate the success of others standpoint. I think he really finds joy in helping others. Now, that is a demotion, of course, but I do think that there is a certain amount of you watch this group stink out loud on offense every game. They could really use you. And I think it would be important to have that while not disrupting that amazing group that starts the second and fourth quarters. Anthony, they were a plus 31 in 9 minutes the other day, a plus 31. And they killed freaking Minnesota on opening night too. So we have this one stretch of the game where we're not very good, but there's a lot of stuff left on the table. That's part of why this is so exciting.
Yeah, the way that I would kind of sell it, and this is, I believe in the move working for 2 reasons. One, I do think, I think D'Lo, I think he's a very self-aware guy. I think he's a very intelligent guy. He just doesn't have a filter. That's why he kind of annoys people sometimes. But I believe in JJ's communication ability, and I believe in D'Lo's self-awareness. And if it's sold to him in a way that he can understand it, I think he buys into the concept. And the way that I would sell it if I was JJ is hey, when you start alongside Austin and alongside LeBron and alongside AD and alongside Rui, even to a certain extent, because Rui operates as kind of like the safety valve because of the way that teams have to match up with AD and LeBron. If you come off of the bench and that's your lineup, all of the time, because I think that's the one thing that I've watched from that opening group. Right now, they are they are a literal even 100, 100
Yep.
defensive and offensive rating so far. They're a net rating of 0, which your starters need to be better than that.
You can't be even in the LeBron and AD minutes. You got to win those
Yeah.
minutes.
And I think part of it is that, like, I still don't think D'Lo looks very comfortable playing off of the ball. When you see the ball swing to him, he still looks like, I just want to take one dribble. Can I take one dribble? Can I just take one? But if you basically tell him, you go to the bench, you could, now I think they'll still stick to some of the concepts and stuff that they're running. The ball isn't sticking as much as I think D'Lo would be accustomed to, even with that second unit. But he would have more freedom there than he has with this first group. And I think for like right now, there is some concern around the league with D'Lo. Like, would he accept whatever role needs to be accepted to make the team better? And if he because his market the last couple of years when he became a free agent wasn't what he expected, but if he buys into this idea, thrives in that concept and makes the Lakers better by buying into that, I actually think he'll have a better market as a free agent after this year than he has the last couple of years, because this isn't the aughts where teams just basically, like, when they were looking at free agency, they'd be like, all right, who gets me the most points? And that's who gets paid the most. There's a lot more focus on basically win shares per dollar, and I think if D'Lo becomes a positive impact player, accepts a role that allows the Lakers to raise their ceiling in the postseason, I actually think that there's a path there for him to seeing his market revitalize.
There's a way for everyone to win.
Yeah,
for sure. And him showing, it's never been a question of his talent or ability, but showing that he can be a winning player, in which I think his passing is probably his most reliable offensive skill. I was talking about this on the pod last night, but one of my bigger concerns with him is offensively, will you make open threes in high pressure environments? Just the ones that you're supposed to make. We don't need you to hit fadeaways over the top of outstretched arms type thing. Just make
just
the ones
down the open
swing ones, but he gets into a bad rhythm and it just can't make anything at all. But I think his passing is a little more reliable, especially in a system that's less dribble penetration dependent as this one is, right? The ball kind of pings around, players move around, set screens for each other. That's great for D'Lo, who his ability to see oh, this guy's setting a screen for that guy over there, and that means this guy's going to be open on the other side of the court after a swing pass type of thing. D'Lo's really good at that type of stuff. So if you're going to put the ball in Austin's hand, who's kicking ass, by the way, if you're going to put the ball in his hands more, and that's working, I think you're spot on with that separation. So yeah, man, there's a way for everybody to win within that, but curious how that goes for sure.
That was a thing that I was hearing over the course of the summer, because I kept on hearing. So JJ gets hired, and then the next thing that I heard was Austin's going to love this. Austin's going to love, JJ's going to love working with Austin. Austin's going to love working with JJ. And got excited, and I got excited because I've been waiting to see what does it look like when Austin has the ball in his hands more than he has the last couple of years. Just show me. It kind of reminds me of Caruso when he was like, well, we know what it looks like if he plays 23 minutes, but we're a little concerned what it looks like if he plays 30. And it's play him 30. Can we just see what it looks like? Can we just give it a go? Sure. And we're finally getting that look at Austin. I think he's playing really well so far. Again, we'll talk about surprises here in a second, but the kind of other side of that coin is, well, where does that leave D'Lo? Where sure. And so that was why in the offseason I was kind of wondering, well, at what point does they're either going to have to stagger or split those guys up, right? And to get back to what brought us to this point in the first place, Dalton allows them to do that. Max doesn't, because he hasn't been the kind of player that you could viably tell D'Lo, hey, we're going to move him into the starting lineup because he's playing so well. It's no, he hasn't. He also needs to play with D'Lo, like you said earlier. But Dalton has been that good, is a first-round pick, is, I think, a better fit with Austin and with those starters anyway. You can viably make the basketball argument to D'Lo that I think he would understand and therefore buy into a little bit more than if it was just like last year when he sulked because he was benched. It was because he didn't buy into the execution of the way he was benched.
Right. Well, who
He
was
looked and
coming
he's
in
like,
for him?
wait, you're benching me and Austin?
Right. Man. Talk about a ship getting off course.
Yeah.
The Christmas game against the freaking Celtics, where it's like D'Lo, Austin, and Rui all coming off of the bench,
Yeah.
all healthy, all three coming off the bench.
Yeah. It was funny. That was the first scoop I ever got, and I was really hoping I was wrong.
Which one was that?
It was like was they were benching D'Lo, and they were going with the I take it back. That was the all wing game. Was when they started like Cam at point right, and then they started
Cam,
Vando
Prince,
and
Vando,
Rui and
LeBron.
when I got that tip, I was like, no way. And then I asked around even more, like and the people that I was talking to were trying to like defend it. I was like, oh my God, they're actually gonna do this. What? And then hilariously, I think they won that game, and then you kind of move forward from there. But let's talk about those surprises. The biggest surprises so far this year. I mentioned Rui off of the top. What his wowed you more? You mentioned Dalton. You can build on the Dalton point if you want. What's really shocked you so far to this to this point in the season?
Jackson, I'm not shocked by Jackson, but he's been
Dude,
really good.
Just gonna say,
were you gonna say Jackson? What do you see? What do you see?
No.
We'll swing it back to you.
I'm gonna talk about Rui, but I was like, please say Jackson,
Yeah,
because I've been really impressed.
So Jackson entering the rotation was not the main reason last year's team started playing better, but it was part of it. Like, it's no coincidence that when he got that backup 5 spot, then things kind of flipped. It's funny. I had a moment of doubt where at the end of preseason, after that Warriors game, even I was like, I think Wood might be better for this group after all. But I'd been pounding the table for Jackson for a minute, right?
You and Raj. Raj is all on board with
Bro, he's like, it's very rare that you've got a guy. So talk about motor. This is sort of the reason why the second quarter group that starts the second and fourth quarters works so well. Is, to me, it's like LeBron, a co-pilot who's brilliant in his own way in D'Lo, and a whole wolf pack behind him. You've got athletes with size and motor. It's Dalton, Rui, and Jackson. And Jackson has way better of an understanding of what the next action in this style of offense, because it's way more handoff, DHO type of stuff.
Yeah.
And you'll always watch when Jackson catches the ball, he is immediately looking to move to that next station. And oftentimes, the other guy, if he were reading it as fast as Jackson were, you'd create that open space. And he's already had like a 3-4 assist game off of this type of style. And so that's something I didn't know about him when we signed him, was like, oh, he's got a level of offensive IQ. Now, obviously the defensive end is the reason why but the deployment of him, it's been so refreshing to see him more on the perimeter. The thing he does best is he can close out to 3-point shooters. He eats up space so quickly. And then obviously
he's a huge human being.
And so but the difference between his ability to jump while he's moving forward versus standing still or backing up is just night and day. And so watching him be deployed in a drop coverage over and over again is part of the low-hanging fruit from last year, where it's like, now he's out on the perimeter a little bit more. And yes, there are some times where your big is going to have to sag back and he's not going to be good at it, right? But just seeing him be really fish to water with the group it has been great to see.
Yeah, he like when he's in that drop coverage and he is purely reactive, that's when he really, really struggles. But when he can be proactive and get up in the air first, or he's a completely different defensive presence. It's a good comment here from Westwood, big man version of Shannon Brown. Shannon Brown could only jump if he was going really
funny.
fast.
That's great. Yes. I thought of that in years. That's such a good comparison.
But yeah, I think like Hayes has been this really pleasant surprise, because again, there's a reason he was drafted as high as he was. Also a reason New Orleans gave up on him. But I also think though that he was being asked to play alongside some bigs sometimes, and it made him this kind of, again, reactive presence. And you want him attacking plays. You want him to go out there and make the defensive play. And the nice thing too is when he and AD are out there together, you have two guys who can go out there and attack defensively, and you have two just those who's like those pound dogs, like those junkyard dogs. It just like you just like you do not. Every movie had those kinds of dogs like break their leash. Like when we were growing up, and that was like the thing we were the most terrified of. You would walk by in certain neighborhoods, and you would see a dog at the end, like on one of those leashes. Like if this dog breaks through here, it's going to kill me. Like, and because it happened in every movie, but I feel like that kind of deployment of AD and Jackson in those lineups that they're playing side by side, that's also really exciting. Like there's a lot to like here about this team. And again, like to kind of go back to a point that I made with Harrison, because I myself fell victim to it, where I allowed the disappointing offseason to kind of overshadow the actual strengths of this team that we had seen from the year prior. One of them, a really surprising one, though, has been Jackson, because he wasn't on that Western Conference Finals team.
No.
And we never really saw this version of him last year.
For sure, right? And there's a level of organization that everybody's going to thrive within. And so, yeah, man, it's been great to see him. Talk to me about Rui, though, about what surprised you about him.
All right. So, again, going back to last year, the players who I would hear the most consistently were kind of frustrated with how things were going. Austin, D'Lo, and Rui. And Rui always kind of surprised me, because Rui is kind of this like happy-go-lucky guy. It didn't surprise me because his role frustrated me, because he never really had a consistent one. So I understood why he would be frustrated, but it really kind of surprised me to hear that like he would voice that concern, because that doesn't strike me as the way that he kind of operates. And now you fast forward to this year, and I think he said after the most recent game, like, what's been the difference? And he was like, the system, and he and that organization, and the fact that he wants to be coached. And it reminded me, he came from Gonzaga. They run a very regimented system. Yes. They are very like, you do this, you check boxes X, Y, and Z, and this is how we are going to thrive collectively. And they've been one of the best and most organized college systems in the country for my entire adult life, basically. And so for him to go from that and have that success in college to then arrive in the pros, where in Washington it was a mess, and then the last couple of years under Darvin it was a mess, and watching him thrive again in a system where he's just like, hey man, go check boxes X, Y, and Z. The baseline, that is your area. Go own that baseline down there. Yep. And that's why it's been like, it's surprising, but it shouldn't have been.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
What have you seen from Rui though? Like is there like, do you like, when we talk about sustainability, like we saw him shoot the leather off of the ball last year. And we've seen, like, statistically last year had a very good season. It just didn't feel like the impact met that, the impact in terms of wins met that statistical production. I think that a lot of that had to do with the in and out of the rotation and what he was being told to do and roll and all that stuff. But I'm at the point, Pete, where it's like somebody asked me, would you include Rui in a trade and stuff like that? I was like, fuck no, not given what we're seeing. So because over the summer, Portland wanted Vando and Rui for Grant. And given what we're seeing from Rui right now, I wouldn't give up Rui by himself for Grant in that contract.
Right. Because remember, part of it, you say this with Austin and Dalton as well, it is the bang for the buck. It's not so much that this player isn't better than that player, but it's like this player at $18 million is better than that player at 32, know? And so the points about Rui from an organized standpoint are spot on. But I think of it from a defensive perspective even more, because that's where the biggest questions were. And I would argue that Rui was super impactful for us last year, and then it all fell apart versus Denver. I would also argue that when not a single role player, except for Taurean Prince, I wonder why, has a good series in the playoffs, then like it's more of illustrative of a systemic wide, like what everybody had a bad series.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And So I have a little
Especially
bit of
because they
grace.
like the same guys who had good series the year before had then bad series. It's like this isn't baseball where you're talking about fractions and fractions and fractions of inches that decide the difference between a bomb and a flyout. You know,
And you have Anthony Davis, good natured as he is, and like, I'll do what I need to do, saying in the middle of that series, we don't know what we're doing half the time. That's not like an observation by me, or I think Anthony Davis is thinking this. He freaking said it
just came out
out
and said it.
loud to
Yeah.
everybody, like, yo, we are lost.
Pete, I was reporting some of the most outlandish shit last year, and I kept on waiting
Oh, I
for,
know.
and it was all true. Like I wasn't making shit up, but I was reporting some of like the craziest shit that you hear from a locker room, and I kept waiting for, and Jovan too, right? Who's on a more traditional platform, and we were reporting these things, and I kept waiting for once a player to like send out a cap emoji, like one time, for somebody to be like, yeah, these reporters will say anything for fucking clicks. No, like it just didn't happen. And like that was the thing, is that like, at the end of the day, I wish Darvin Wells seems like a good human being, all of that stuff. But also, it was a disaster last season. And I think again, like when we talk about like recent memory painting our outlook moving forward,
Mhm.
I think that's what I kept kind of that brick wall was what I kept on running into coming into the season. It's like, yeah, but it can't be, a coach can't be the difference between 5 wins. You know how many
Why not?
wins 5 wins is? No,
You
like
can't.
like if I'm looking from it like statistically, a 5-win difference is a giant swing. But I also like, now you're right, Pete. You're absolutely right to say why not?
All of that is
To quote
predicated
Russell
on a
Westbrook.
all of that is predicated on a certain baseline of like that coach is doing certain things like playing their best players, adjusting to the opponent. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like a lot of what Reddick is doing, and he still has fruit to pick, but it's not perfect so far. But just the common sense type of stuff and the level of like organization, which is the coach's job,
Yeah.
at least, I mean, it's everybody's job, but they're the one of the main leaders of that, is like, yeah, if everybody's doing that, and there are 30 jobs in the NBA, like every head coach should be like that to some degree. Like if you're all within that spectrum, then yeah, you shouldn't swing a game more than 5 games for a head coach. But if you're not doing don't start your 11th man 20 games.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. Objectively correct that like the things that were being done last year were so dumb that it would be this giant swing. But it's still hard for me to look at the stats and look at the other thing that they're getting some help with. I was actually talking about this in the lounge Slack last night. Sacramento, I think, got worse.
Mm-hmm.
Clippers got worse. Golden State, well, they're going to be without Steph for at least a couple weeks, and I think they got a little bit worse. Not making the Laurie trade, I think, is going to be something that they regret. All of a sudden, that Pacific Division, and you're playing 4 games against each of these teams, that doesn't look quite as tough. The Denver Nuggets, I think, got way worse. Like,
yeah, that's an interesting one.
Like concern, I hope he's okay with me saying this, but like I texted Adam Modest from DNVR the other day. I was like, hey, how concerned are you over the Nuggets? And he was like, very fucking concerned, and he's right to be, that bench unit is a disaster. And it's not just because of Russ, but Russ also isn't helping.
No.
And so like the West is a little bit more wide open, I think, this year. OKC's legit, but they aren't going to have Hartenstein for a while too. So like the West is a little bit more open than we thought. And that makes wins easier to come by. And then JJ isn't doing a lot of the dumb stuff that the Darvin was. Like, I'm really starting to talk myself into maybe 5 isn't enough. Maybe a 5-win difference isn't enough. We might be looking at an even bigger swing potentially.
Even if it's only 5, though, we won 47. What if 52?
Yeah,
What seed does
52
52 wins
team that gets you to like a 3 seed.
That's a home court advantage in the first round, at least, right?
Yeah.
Like, why was that so? If we already won 47 games anyway, while just the self-sabotage, right? And I get, look, no guarantee AD stays healthy, which I think is sort of our biggest single point of failure on this team. Like lots of stuff can get in the way, but just I don't see why it was such a, even if it's just 5, we're a 3 seed, like you said.
Yeah. I mean, I can only speak for myself, and what I fell into, the issues that, my own kind of blind spot here was being too swayed by, well, maybe Rui isn't the player that I thought he was 2 years prior, or maybe Austin isn't, like, and it's impossible not to feel that way sometimes,
Sure.
and yeah, now we arrive here. The thing though, too, like you mentioned Rui defensively, and we've talked a lot about the difference from last year to this year. I think the biggest difference in aggregate from last year to this year is the hyper awareness that this coaching staff has of who the guys are. Like, it's not like last year, it was a lot of hoping guys would turn into different players. It was a lot of hoping,
Always dangerous.
hoping Torian Prince would be Chris Middleton, or Austin would be Dante DiVincenzo, or, so on and so forth. And this year it's like, yes, we are going to ask certain things of players, maybe tweak their approach slightly because that's what coaches are told to do. But we're only going to ask for like realistic things from these guys, and we're going to work with their strengths and try to make up for their weaknesses. And like that sets the entire table here, because like if you aren't, it's the cliche. If you aren't aware of what it is that you're coaching, if you aren't like, the first step to fixing a problem is being aware that there is one. So if you have no idea, no understanding, fundamental understanding of who your team is, which is crazy to say about a coach and heading into a second season with essentially the same team, but like to watch this coaching staff and I think they all deserve a ton of credit for this. I had questions about the coaching staff coming into it. To watch this coaching staff be so hyper aware of who the Lakers are, that's been I think the most refreshing aspect of all of this.
Super refreshing. It makes me retroactively mad, but nonetheless. So Rui, for example, right? He's averaging how many rebounds now? 7 boards a game, 8 boards a game. There's a certain amount of, you look at Rui Hachimura and be like, hey man, you're big as shit and Kevin Huerter's trying to box you out. Go kick his ass. Like, that's not rocket science.
And he'll happily do it. If you tell him to do it, he'll happily do it.
And he'll do it very well. And so there's a certain amount of like, it doesn't take a genius to see what your guys are good at or not, but you do have to be paying attention. And where a lot of coaches go astray is they have more fidelity to their systems, and they're trying to fit players into the way that they want to play basketball. And the reality is that's out of order. And that's something that I've actually really liked so far with Redick that I think will bear more fruit down the line, is that things have to happen in a certain order. It's part of the reason why I think they were smart to not make a move this summer, because I think we're going to have way clearer eyes about what this team actually needs and what it actually is when it's actually organized and is actually playing the right guys to their strengths. We'll be able to be like, oh, if we do this, like you said, there's more that can be improved internally with this roster, to where at the deadline, we are going to have a different idea of what we need. And so from a coaching standpoint, there's that we're installing stuff. He's using that word a ton of, and that they are more organized defensively than they are on offense quite yet. And it's a big improvement in offensive organization, but they're only getting like one. We shoot too much off of one pass, where it's just like, keep that same sequence that you were on moving, just 1 or 2 more progressions. I was at forgive me, I'm rambling. I was at a coaching clinic with Mark Few, where he was a presenter. And one of the topics that he did a presentation on was the value of ball reversal. And it was like, 0 ball reversals, we score this many points per possession. 1, 2, it's like, we're beating the hell out of our team. And so, or of the other team. So that's what I preach to my team, is if we can do this, right? And so then we're on to something. And so once the offense gets to that point where we're not just taking the first shot that's sort of okay, like we're cooking with gas, man.
That's the thing that I find myself saying most often watching them play right now. It's like, one more.
Swing that MF. Like LeBron said, swing that MF is the motto of the season. They're going to score a zillion points.
I've often said LeBron and I have a lot in common. All right, before we get you out of here, and this has been an absolute blast. A reminder: check out LFR. If you listen to my show, you listen to LFR. Pete and Darius do an incredible job, and shouts to Jeannie. Jeannie's the goat.
Yeah.
But before we get you out of here, we are, it's a long season. There are going to be things that can improve, whether that's internally or externally. I think you need to see Vando back in the rotation before you really start considering any kind of external improvements or tweaks. Is there anything though that, like, looking at how they've operated so far and maybe theoretically placing Vanderbilt into a rotation, like, is there anything that you would love, like, you think they still really need to address on this roster?
From a personnel standpoint?
Yeah. First, well, we can do this the organic way. What's the internal improvement that you're looking for first, and then we can talk about external.
We can't stink on offense with LeBron off the floor. There's our offense built around AD is not good, and AD is way more limited. Like, AD needs a dance partner, in my opinion. Like, he's at his best offensively when there's some interplay off of him and another player. Whereas LeBron is a skeleton key. He can come off of a screen and hit a three. He can be a roll man, and after setting a screen for Austin, they can run inverted ball screens. He can be you know what I mean? He could be whatever you need him to be offensively. AD has more specific things that he does well, and is also, like, because he's got the physical attributes that he has, and he's so skilled at that size, there are a lot of possessions where, like, AD kind of messes up the spacing. It's weird because he's like driving into a spot, or basically solving the spacing around AD is super important, and not doing any favors with Gabe on the floor and Max on the floor at the same time. I think the whole concept is to have a defensive unit in that group right there. But what I'm seeing is that our offense is leading to points for the other team because we're either turning the ball over or we're getting a bad shot. Bad possessions on offense, whether it's a turnover or not, are going to lead to points going the other way. And so that's the main,
like, unbalanced. I feel like those lineups, like, to your point about the spacing, they finish possessions way more unbalanced than they need to be.
Right.
And that like, whether it's, too many guys below the free throw line, or, the one guy who would be able to get back is way off to one side, which makes the run back even further. It's a little wonky right now.
For sure. And so that, I think, is the biggest internal improvement. And then in terms of the roster, like a defensive wing that can hit a three. We have a kind of a Goldilocks situation in which, like, I'm excited that Dalton is not as bad on defense as I thought he would be. But Rui has had extra defensive value these first three games because he's been switching on to Sabonis and Gobert and who's the other, Nurkic, right? These are all big physical fives that you can sort of see, hey, but when Rui gets pulled out onto the perimeter, do we have a tool that we've got Dalton, who can light the world on fire with his offense, but is going to be tested on defense. And then we have Vando, which has the opposite problem. So from a personnel standpoint, is there a way to get that guy in between that can do both? And I think Max is ideally that. I just think he's too young and limited at this point. But from a personnel standpoint, that's like the main archetype, is like a 2-3 that can defend and not hit a three as well as Dalton, but not have as many offensive questions as Vando.
Yeah. Ironically, it's still KCP. It's so frustrating. All right. Let's get, we have two super comments here, we only have one super comment. So, but I still get to play this thing because why not? All right. So the first super comment here comes from Marley Villasenor, who writes 3-0 start for the Lakers plus Denver going through the Russ experience. Chef's kiss. What was Jokic thinking of advocating for him? Every player looks at Russ and like, this is an issue throughout the league. Everybody looks like it would be fun having Russ on your team until he's actually on your team. Until it's like, oh, okay, all right, this is who he is. So I think that's what's going on there. And then shouts to Triple J, who is a YouTube member, a Lounge VIP. All right. That is going to do it here then for this episode. Oh, do you have any somebody asked for predictions on the World Series? Do you have any predictions on the World Series?
Dodgers in 6. It was awesome to be at the Laker game, by the way, when the Dodgers were winning a World Series game. Like, Yeah, just the crackle in downtown LA this weekend was incredible. Just an incredible LA sports weekend.
I was so bummed not to be in LA for this sports weekend.
It was
So
electric.
bummed.
Yeah.
Did you see? I said this on the show the other day, or yesterday, but they showed Freeman's homer on the jumbotron, and the Lakers immediately went on an 8-0 run. Immediately, it's just like
the juice from it was great. Yep.
Yeah, like it, and because they showed it on the telecast, they were like starting to kind of like respond to it. They're like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, and then you had to wait for the stoppage and play to actually play it on the jumbotron, and then they did. And then the pop that you got from there on that, so cool. Sports are the best. Sports can be the best. Pete, thank you very much, man, for hopping on. This has been an
Super
absolute
fun.
blast. And it's been we originally were planning to do this like a few games into the preseason. That would have been a very different show. I really prefer this show. People think that I love to rant and rave. No,
you do. Oh, get out of here.
What?
You love to doom at the very least.
I mean, look, I'm better probably at ranting and raving than complimenting, but I much prefer. Why would I not like the Lakers being good? It's better for traffic.
But when the Lakers are good, you're gonna find something that's like marginally annoying, and you're gonna fucking.
It's Coloco
over again.
What the?
Oh,
fuck
is that your thing now? Is that the thing?
What the? ESPN reported like a week ago that it was coming very soon, and we're still waiting. We're still waiting for it.
That is true.
But no, I really don't have much to nitpick with this group so far. That's the nice thing about being surprised is that like I'm relishing being surprised so far. And yeah, eventually I think it'll probably be the D'Lo to the bench thing. That'll be the thing that I just like. It just keeps kind of tweaking at me, but
gotcha.
I'll keep texting you about it and I'll keep bugging you about it and bringing you onto the show to talk about it.
Yeah.
Anything
bring me on
that you
when
want to plug before you go?
Just doing play-by-plays on playback. I'm doing film sessions. They're way less produced than they used to be for the purpose of being able to create way more of them. So it's gritty. I'm gonna zoom in on the wide TV angle that we all look at and kind of tell you the story of whatever caught me about a certain game. So yeah, check out my film sessions on YouTube, and yeah, let's have a great year, man.
Sounds good. All right. That is going to do it here for this episode of The Lounge. Going to put this, turn it around for the RSS feed as quickly as I possibly can. And then tonight after the game, Raj and I will be here in the lounge to talk about it. So until then, and until the next time you guys hear from me, I'm Anthony Irwin. That was Pete Zayas, whose face you could finally see. Have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's. And I will talk to you in a few hours. Have a good one, everybody.